I'm Ashley from Ashley's Reads on Twitter or of Fiction and Fantasy on Instagram, and today I am here with a 2021 quarter one wrap up. Quick stats. I've already done a January wrap up, so I'm not going to talk about those books again in detail. I did include them in the stats that I will use for like the little graphs and things like that. The books that I will briefly talk about are my February and March book. Today is actually editing day and I sat down to edit another past video. I thought that the footage was really good. There was a part where I was like, please, please, please let me roll a 6, and I would like rolled a 6 and screamed because I got to read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. So instead, I'm filming today and I'm really trying to get caught up to like only being posting about, like if it's May, I post about April at max and not March. So here we are. I'm doing the Q1 wrap up. I will probably do just monthly wrap ups at the end, or maybe I'll do like, hold on. So we have January, February, March, April, May, June. So like maybe in June I'll do the June wrap up plus like Q2 stats. We'll see. But for now, this is mostly just to get me caught up. I wasn't prepared to do this, but we're gonna go for it. Okay, we're gonna try this. We're gonna try this again. I took all of the books from February and March, put them into one, and categorize them by stars. So we'll go ahead and do that first, and then we'll save the stats for last after I've talked about these books. Personally, I think the stats are more fun. So anyways, let's start with the worst. These books, I had 3, 4, and 5 stars. Judging by the books that I had in April and in May that I'm currently reading, I would say I had a lot better reads at the beginning of the year, or maybe I just had a better outlook at the beginning of the year. Maybe I'm more critical now, I'm not really sure. Hi, Caroline. So the first one I had was Dark Uprising by Autumn M. Birt. I got this as an ARC. I was told it was a dark fae fantasy, and I thought, oh, that'll be really cool. It was an urban fantasy. That's what I didn't like about A Curse So Dark and Lonely, is the urban part, or even The Cruel Prince. Those are both series that I did enjoy, but I didn't like when they went to the earth. That's not right. When they went to like the real world or the modern world, I didn't like that. And this book was mostly in the modern world, so I didn't enjoy that. But I'm sorry, Dark Uprising is actually book 2, but I think that is really the first book of the trilogy. I was on the launch team for this book. I don't know that I'm still on the launch team for this series. I may have been removed. We'll talk about that later. So this book I did enjoy more because, again, it is urban fantasy, but this one had more farm to it. I say I enjoyed the setting, like the atmosphere more, but I hated the main character, October. I couldn't relate to her at all. I thought that she was really whiny, and it was not a great time. I did like seeing all of the characters from the prequel though. That was nice, I guess, seeing how like all of their paths crossed, but I'm not really going to talk too much in detail about this book because I don't recommend the series. I actually think that I gave Dark Uprising a 2.5 that I moved to a 3. There were almost any content warning that I could think of I felt like was in this book, and I didn't enjoy that part, which again, like, it's a dark fantasy, so you could say that that's on me. And in the very end, there was a plot twist which made me feel incredibly uncomfortable, and I was hoping that I was misinterpreting the situation and that it wasn't what it was. And you can read my review on Goodreads, or like I can maybe post in the description like what specifically made me uncomfortable, but I don't really want to talk about it on video because it could be like triggering to people. I would not have given this book 3 stars had I known how the ending scene would be treated in the next book. So I guess you guys can find out about that in my April wrap up. For me, at this current rating, I'm trying to use the compile system now, but I had not started that yet in March and April. So for me, a 3 book is like a decent book. I would say Dark Uprising was like the low side of decent, and Elements of Power was the high side of decent. I just want to really like differentiate that I would not compare the quality of these two. So, Elements of Power by Kate Stoessel. This was the first book that I ever got to do a book tour for on my blog and on my Bookstagram. So I had a great time. It was very, very nice to get it as an e-arc and as a physical copy, and the author signed it and sent a matching bookmark as well. So that is very nice. Kate, if you happen to watch this for some reason, thank you so much for sending me this book and the ebook, and for allowing me to be a part of your book tour. I believe that was with Turn the Page Tours. This book basically follows, what is her name? Cory Leithstone, and she is a witch who lives in a world where witches are given specializations and colors for their specialization, and they go to school for that specialization, and then they get a career in that specialization, and that basically defines their entire life. And Cory is someone who has really excelled at a lot of things, but all of her friends who weren't as skilled as her were already given a specialization, and she's like the last one in the whole school. So her mom, who's like this powerful witch in a high-powered job, comes in and they're like yelling at the principal, like, why doesn't my daughter have a specialization? And they say, well, she's more powerful than everyone else, we couldn't give her one. So she gets to go to this like illustrious elite secret college called Spindlewick, and this academy university is very full of secrets, and there's a lot of plot twists. There's a lot of cool characters there. I will say what I really did not enjoy about this book is that it has most of the tropes that I hate in a fantasy book. So please know that I don't think I am personally the target audience for this book, and I think a lot of people liked it more than me. So Cory is kind of like the chosen one. She has more powers than all of her peers. She gets her abilities very quickly. She also kind of has, I don't think this is a spoiler, but feel free to like hit the like L, is it L, to skip ahead 10 seconds just in case. She basically has all 4 elemental powers like Avatar: The Last Airbender. So I didn't enjoy that. Hopefully that's been less than 10 seconds. I didn't enjoy that because that's not, unless like it's Avatar based, and like there has to be a really good reason in the plot to have that much powers, and so that did bug me. And then the romance here was not a slow burn at all, and so I know a lot of people don't mind like love at first sight basically, but I can't handle that. So that's why I gave this book 3 stars. Like the actual content, the writing, there wasn't anything bad about it. It just wasn't meant for me, and that's totally fine. I would sign up for a book tour for her sequel, or would just get the sequel on my own and read it. It was a very interesting concept, and I liked all of the colors and how organized the author had. Like there's even a little chart here that shows all of the colors and specializations. Those were the only 3 stars. Next up, in February, I read A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. This was a reread, and the first book that I ever tabbed, and a couple of the tabs fell out. I actually went and bought a pack of more tabs so that I can key them better, and I may re-tab this book if I ever reread it. But this is one of the first series that I've ever reread because my attention span does not enjoy reading books over and over. I don't really do comfort reads. I will say, being done with the trilogy, I did really enjoy the sequel. Rereading this one, I wouldn't look forward to. It would have to be years from now, honestly, to do it again. It was mostly just about the war and like the build up to the war, and it was kind of boring. It was still good in that like these were all like tabbed moments that I liked. So, but I gave it 4 stars. And maybe in another 5 years I'll reread it again. But I'm finally ready to move on to the ones that I hadn't read in the series. I read The Stolen Kingdom by Jillian Boehme, and that book follows, is another fantasy, kind of elemental based. The main character has earth powers, I believe, and she is, I think this is not a spoiler, but again, feel free to skip ahead. She is secretly the heir to like a fallen kingdom or a stolen kingdom. So her ancestors, her secret family don't rule anymore. There's like an evil king on the throne, and he has two princes, two sons who are princes. She believes that they're both just as evil as him, and so she agrees to help kind of like a rebellion, to like be the face of the rebellion. She agrees that she is going to go there, and she's not actually going to murder the king and his two sons by herself, but she's going to basically support it. And then once the three of them are taken care of, she is going to take over as queen and rule the kingdom, because the king is like evil. He's using dark magic. He is like putting these very, very heavy taxes on all of the like lower class or the peasants of the kingdom, and basically just doesn't care about any of his citizens at all. And so she ends up meeting the second son at the first son's like wedding party, and she finds that perhaps he's not as evil as his father. And that's very like interesting, because like, is she good if she is willing to murder an entire family to steal their kingdom back from her family she didn't know existed? It was really interesting. I really liked it. I think, what I gave it? Yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I don't know, there was just like a little bit missing in, I don't know, the romance. There was just like, the intrigue was a little lower than a 5-star. But I would, and it's a standalone, so, but I would definitely read something else by Jillian Boehme. She has another book out now that's like a Mulan retelling, but I don't know that I would want to read that. So if she comes up with a 3rd book, I would be interested in reading it. That was it for 4-star reads in February. In March, I read House of Holo by K.M. Sutherland, and that was my first arc from Edelweiss and my first arc, I think, from Penguin ever. So I was really excited to read this book. House of Holo is basically about 3 sisters. When they were little kids, they were out for like a New Year's Eve party with their parents, and they were just walking through town, and their parents kissed, I think, like when New Year's hit, and then they turned around behind them to say Happy New Year's to the kids, and all 3 of them were gone. And there was no one else there. There was no proof of like anyone taking them, just nothing. And then after a certain amount of time went by, and they were like a missing persons case, trying to like give up on them, they just showed up. They had no memories of what had happened, and this time their hair went from like dark brown or black to fading completely gray. Their irises are black, and they are like constantly eating, like all the time. They're basically like monstrous, and that's all that we really know. Then the father, I'm trying to like think of a way to describe it, but it's really like, it's very gory. So basically the father tried to kill them all because he thinks like they weren't really his kids. And so the doctors and the police and everything are like, well, this is a known condition that could happen. It's very rare, but like the stress made their hair turn gray and their eyes black. They are your children. So he basically ends up, trigger warning, he basically ends up killing himself. And so now it's the mom who like doesn't let them call her mom. It's very wild. And one of the sisters goes missing, and so the other 2 have to find her. They have like a weird connection. It was a horror book, and I've told you guys many times I will not read horror, I will not read gore. I would say I didn't give it 5 stars just because it had so much of that gore that is not my style, but the ending was really good. The characters were really interesting, and I was thoroughly surprised the entire way. I would read it if there was a sequel, or I would read another book by K.M. Sutherland. Next up, I read The 9 by Gwen Strauss, which is a story about 9 women who escaped a Nazi prison camp towards the end of World War II. This book was heartbreaking. There's a lot of content warnings. I mean, some of them are fairly obvious considering it's about World War II in Nazi Germany. So if you're looking for a happy read, I wouldn't recommend it. Like, even, I think the hardest thing for me with reading memoirs is, even though I know it's real life, I want a happy ending for the people. and you don't get that. Most of the women did escape Nazi Germany, and then they still didn't have happy endings, or they had okay endings. I think a couple of them were happy. That was really, really hard for me. It was really hard. It kind of put me in a reading slump. I'm really glad that I read it because it was a very interesting perspective on World War II. From women's perspective, I haven't really had a lot of that growing up for any of my experiences about any military history. I don't know that you would call it any history, especially involving wars. So I did really enjoy reading it for the sake, like, I'm glad that I read it, not that I personally enjoyed seeing reading women be tortured. So yeah, it was, I would recommend it to people who want to learn about history and who don't mind stomaching, and who can stomach very, very dark topics. So yes. Then I read What Beauty There Is by Cory Anderson. This one came in a beautiful hardcover. It was my first hardcover arc. Oh yeah, that was both the 9 and What Beauty There Is came from Bookish first. So I will link all of the publishers as well below. What Beauty There Is was a thriller, a thriller mystery. It was very gory, so again, not my thing. I'm surprised that I gave it 4 stars, but I was very intrigued. It's basically 2 adults who had some sort of like drug deal, and it went wrong. They betrayed one another sort of deal, and it's about their kids. So like the 2 dads are basically like ruined each other's lives, and it's basically about the kids who didn't really do anything wrong themselves, dealing with the aftermath of their own parents' decisions throughout the entire book, whether active or passive actions throughout the book. And I thought that that was wild, and it was so sad to see that like no matter what they did, like they still kept having terrible things happen to them. It was like a series of unfortunate events almost, but like somehow like even darker than a series of unfortunate events, and like young adult. I've also seen it as coming of age. It's kind of like a poetic writing, and if you like endings that are definitive, don't read this book. But it was really good. I would read more books by Cory Anderson as well. For 5-star books in February, I have Love at First. No, ring light. I have Love at First by Kate Clayborn. I used to read contemporaries a lot. I really, really loved Sarah Dessen growing up. I had a couple of like Gail Forman books as well. I think I read like If I Stay and Just One Day, and I really enjoyed those. But ever since I really got into fantasy, I stopped reading contemporary, and I really have to be in like a contemporary mood. So the fact that I read this book while I wasn't like seeking out contemporary books, I was completely enthralled from even the prologue. It is about like enemies to friends to lovers, and an apartment complex where one of them wants the apartment complex to be like renovated and made like completely public for like temporary people, kind of like a long-term hotel, and the other one is like, keep this ancient apartment, we are going to live here for the rest of our lives, and we're all a giant family, and we'll never renovate anything, and it'll be exactly like their grandma had it. So it was very, very interesting. Beautiful writing. I am so excited to read. I think Kate Clayborn had another book before this, or right after, yeah, before this, called Love Lettering, so I really want to read that. I have it, thank you to Amazon Prime, for free. So I am very, very excited. I love this book. I would reread this book again already, like next year. So totally recommend if you like contemporary. Yes, and thank you to Bookish First, I think also for that one. I read Gemina by Amie Kaufman and Kristoff. I've learned a lot of things about those authors since I read that book. So I will say that I did give Gemina 5 stars. I do think that like the multiple person cast was amazing. I borrowed both Illuminate and Gemina from my library, and I think knowing what I do now, I will borrow Obsidio and I will finish the series, but I don't think that I will ever read anything by Kristoff or Amie Kaufman again. I don't know whether I would recommend Illuminate to anyone now. That is my personal decision. I respect whatever decision you decide to make. What you read is your choice. So yeah, moving on. I read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. It was a 1920s Romeo and Juliet gang retelling, but like fantasy aspects, because there were like monsters and wow. It was so good. I'd wanted to read this for a long time. It was a 5-star expectation for me, and Chloe, girl, delivered. It was great. I would recommend it to anyone who likes enemies to lovers, anyone who likes slow burn, anyone who likes Romeo and Juliet retellings. I don't even like Romeo and Juliet. Anyone who likes historical fantasy, you read it. I read Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulley, and that one was an arc from NetGalley. So she's half French and half, I believe, Ojibwe, but I am most definitely probably pronouncing that wrong. So it is about kind of like the pulls between both sides of her family, like an identity crisis almost, because it's like a coming of age story. She is supposed to be going out on her own, going to college, studying to become a doctor. She also wants to be a hockey player like her father, but for reasons that are kind of unknown to us, she can't really do that. She's dealing with death in the family. She's dealing with hardships in her own community, but she's really just like struggling to take all of these things at once. And then she watches her own best friend die in front of her. And, sorry, I'm kind of emotional. So it was a very, very heartbreaking story. There is like a cute guy on the hockey team, and he basically tells her, he's like an undercover agent, and he tells her like they need her as a member of her community to help kind of like be a spy and find out, I mean, obviously she knows who killed her best friend because she saw it happen, but like find out the motive and the bigger, like it's like a drug ring behind it, and to be able to help them take down people causing all of the deaths and addictions in her community and her city. And it was wild. There was some very good, like the dialogue was very good. I really liked all of the characters, and it was just heartbreaking. It's not a happy ending, and I'm still kind of broken over reading it. I would definitely recommend it if you like mysteries or thrillers. Definitely look up the content warnings before, because there's a lot, and it was uncomfortable to read. So yes, I think that was a standalone book. It did get picked up for a TV show, I believe. Finally, I read Carnival by, I always do this, Carnival. I think it's Carnival by Stephanie Garber. Carnival. I read the book by Stephanie Garber, and it was really, really good. It is about a character named Scarlett who lives with her younger sister, I think, Tella/Donatella, and their abusive father. And she has an arranged marriage with a complete stranger, and she's very excited for it because he writes her romantic letters, and it means that she'll get to leave her island and be free of her father. She ends up finding a ticket to go to this magical carnival sort of place that she's always dreamed of going to her entire life. And I think she gets a ticket for herself, her sister, and her fiance, but the only way she can go is if she sneaks off the island with this complete stranger, and it is about their adventure to the island. When she gets there, she's like, okay, we're gonna stay for like one night, and then we're going back to get married like immediately. And her sister goes missing. So it's basically a rush against time to be able to find her sister and to find a way back home, very like in time to get married to this mysterious stranger that she's never met, but that she hopes will give her a happily ever after. and it's a very like magical atmosphere. There's a lot of plot twists, and it's just very interesting. I always want to say like a dark fantasy. It's not like the content warnings are specifically terrible, it's just kind of like dark aesthetically. There's a lot of intrigue to it, and I think I gave it 4.5 stars and I rounded up to 5. My only thing is I just felt like the romance is kind of slow burn, and then it's kind of too fast, and then it's kind of like, what is happening? I didn't love, like, the romance wasn't a 10 for me. That's really, I liked the rest of it, and I liked a lot of the romance, just not all of it. Some of it I was kind of like, okay, we could do without that. But that was pretty much it. Otherwise, I really enjoyed it. Those were all of the books that I read in February and March. I'm surprised, like, I forgot a couple names, but the fact that I still remember all of the plots has me feel pretty good. So yes, I'm going to pull up my phone so that I can tell you guys the statistics. Okay, so obviously these statistics will include the books I told you about today, but it will also include the books from January. So feel free to go back and read watch my January wrap up if you're curious about the statistics for the other books. Okay, so for genres, I read 1 contemporary, 1 graphic novel, 1 classic, 9 fantasies, 2 mysteries/thrillers, 3 sci-fi/dystopian, and 2 nonfiction. And that's definitely a more varied, like, still fantasy as a majority compared to 2020, but I am branching out, so that's good. Then as far as the source where I got the books, 11 of them were ARCs, 6 of them were from the library, and 2 of them were books that I already owned. So not bad. It's actually quite different. In 2020, I mostly only got books from the library, so this is definitely an increase in ARCs, so thanks NetGalley. As far as the format that I read the books in, I read 9.5 of them physical, because Gemina, I both read the physical book and listened to the audiobook. And then I read 7 ebooks and listened to 2.5 audiobooks. Now I'm starting to have the option to go back to the library again. I will always choose that. But when it comes to ARCs, I normally get them in ebook format, so that's not really my choice. And then finally for series, I read 7 standalones. I started 8 series and I continued 4 books. The 8 that I started, 3 of those series I can/would continue. Either I've decided I won't finish the series, or there's supposed to be a sequel and it isn't published yet. So that's basically where we're at for the stats. I am currently finalizing my June TBR. I'm trying so hard to only pick books I really, really want to read, plus the ARCs that I have to read in June. I really want to read sequels, so trying to fit all of that in. I think I have 2 or 3 buddy reads, but I have to put all of that into 15 books, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that. So I am struggling, but I am trying my hardest to get through my May ARCs, because if I can get through those, I can keep my TBR the same and not have to move them over. And I spent most of the day filling out documents, and yeah, I'm a little stressed, so I don't know if I can read right now. I don't know if reading will make me more stressed and give me a migraine, or if reading will make my stress go away. I don't really know what would make me less stressed right now, but I hope I figure it out. And I hope that I get all of this paperwork done, because I'm really tired of filming. I mean, like, sorry I'm mad, guys. And thank you for sticking with me as I have worked to catch all of this up. Let me know what you've been reading and what you've loved and hated, or tell me your thoughts on all of these books. And I hope that you guys have a lovely, less stressful week.